Aloha, welcome to the second interview series of the new Oceania Literary Series events featuring Patrick Rosal. Today is January 29, 2015. My name is Craig Santos Perez. I'm the director of the Creative Writing Program. We are going to be group interviewing Patrick today. We're so glad he's visiting us all the way from New Jersey. I'll introduce the co-interviewers, Amalia, Darlene, and Harrison. We're behind the camera. My first question is, this question kind of I'm asking all our interviewees, is to think about origin stories and genealogy. So if you would share your origin of becoming a poet, how has it shaped your identity, from maybe when you first started to now?
If there's one word that would describe my origin in terms of becoming a poet, it would be late. Because I really didn't start reading books and even considering poetry until I was almost my mid-20s. But I think it really starts when I wanted to be a musician and a composer. I studied jazz pretty hard on my own. I've always been a kind of autodidact, and I think thinking about music as a musician and a DJ and somebody who loves to dance, all those things, all those desires just translated so easily into me writing poems and making it poetic. So I think, to answer your question more directly, the birth of me as a poet began maybe in the gestation of music.
Thank you.
Listening to you today, I had only known your written work, and so I read it in my voice. And some have made the distinction between page poets and stage poets, and we talked a little about this today. Could you say something about that and what you think?
Yeah, it makes me mad. First of all, we all come from an oral tradition of poetry, and I don't know what's happening. The thing about both page and stage poetry is surprise. You have to be prepared for anything, or not prepared, but one of the reasons why we both do work on the page and out loud is to be surprised. So, today I just gave this reading. Like, if you go into a reading wanting to choreograph every single thing, or at least for me, it deprives me of the opportunity to see something inside a poem that I myself wrote and have read it many, many times, or it deprives me of a sound or a tone or something in my body. And so the distinction between page and stage is troubling. It's troubling for me because the poetics actually aren't a whole lot different. The cultural valences are the way that we praise one or denigrate the other depending on where you're at. That's different. But in terms of making community, in terms of discovering something about the way that we see the world, in terms of being changed, there's not a whole lot of difference. There's not a whole lot. I could go on and on about it, but yeah, I think the distinction is really blurred for me.
So name some of the influence, just what has influenced your poetry?
Ooh, John Coltrane, Africa Bombada, Pete Rock, my mom, who used to make up songs when she was trying to put my brother to sleep. My dad, his piano playing. My older brother, Nick, Anthony. The list goes on and on. All of you, like when I go home, like I'm gonna, hopefully, it's like birds and it sticks to my body. And then when I go to the page, you're all there with me when I'm making it. I think that I tend to be like a sponge, and that can be hard because you can take on too much. But maybe as a result of being the son of immigrants, I've had to learn how to be receptive to many different things. So I think that my influences are really wide, broad. So I hope those examples are just like a handful.
How do you address the topic of masculinity in your poems, and what goes on in your head as you write and talk about them as a Filipino American?
It's a great question. So this is not something that I think out loud, but to answer your question in retrospect, one of the things that poetry does, like I think that it brings together ideas or images or sounds that you don't normally see together. And at least in growing up in the 70s and 80s, the notion of masculinity and sensuality, those aren't two things that you put together. And I think in my poems, one of the things that I want to do is I want to interrogate the world through my senses. And I believe that I can be changed, and I feel like I have been changed by my habits of attention that I've tried to cultivate over time. That's a lot. What does that have to do? What does it have to do with masculinity? I think that being an Asian American boy or a man, we are taught and even indoctrinated to be inside of our bodies in really particular and sometimes really rigid ways. Poetry wants to resist that. It doesn't want your body to be any one thing. Poetry doesn't want any monolithic one thing. And so I'm constantly trying to figure out my relationship to the world in ways that might test expectations about masculinity. I think the other thing too is to like go back to those times. I mean, I had a pretty violent adolescence and young adulthood, and if I can use memory and remembering my sensual life, my violent sensual life during that time, I feel like that can reveal to me a kind of intimacy, a kind of love, a kind of forgiveness that I feel like is necessary in the world and really, really available in poetry through language. I don't know if that answers that.
Thank you.
If you could give advice to any person of color writer that's just starting this journey into poetry, given the kind of like the way people disparage people of color poetry just in general, what would your advice be?
Oh yeah. I'm already grateful to you for trying to do your thing. I may not get to know you, but somebody like me will get to know you or hear you. I hope that I get to hear you. But there's somebody in the world who wants to hear you work through your trouble. That's a guarantee. I guarantee that that's real. And it's hard to find that other body that resonates with you, or the other 100 or 100,000 bodies that resonate with you, but they're in the world. I mean, to be in the middle of the Pacific Ocean is sort of an amazing experience. And to think about it as an idea, I mean, the notion of an island being connected underneath. I had just learned about the sort of slow march of the Hawaiian Islands and how connected it is underneath all of that. That's not a new idea. But I think that you gotta have faith in that. You have to have faith that actually there's somebody who wants to see the work of trying to trouble through your relationship to the world with language. Because you might open a way that wasn't there before. And I'm grateful to people for trying to do that.
One thing I love about your work is there's so many memorable characters throughout your collections. And so I'm wondering if you can give us some advice in terms of how you work out characterization, in terms of different craft elements. How do you get voices right? Do you do character sketches and so on?
one of the things that I don't have a whole lot of tolerance for when I travel is like the tourist stuff, like these like resort towns and these towns that are constructed for whatever reason. And part of the reason why is it's so hard to get beyond a predetermined role, like my role as a tourist and other people's roles as natives. I guess I don't think of the people who are in my poems as being characterized. I think of them as being seen and as human beings who see me back. That's similar to like that whole tourist BS. Like there's not a real mutual seeing happening. So I think that the people who are in my poems, who I hope live in my poems, I guess I really hope that they live in my poems, and that that I've done my work of seeing them and seeing them see me too. I think the other thing is for me not to erase myself. I think that there's an ethics when someone arrives inside of my poem, that they don't just become an object, but they become a partner in me seeing myself too. So characterization, I think that's a great way to put it, but the way that we normally think of characterization is that we're looking like this, when really what characterization might be, it's this mutual seeing of one another.
Thank you.
You said that you came to poetry in your mid-20s, and now after 3 books and you're working on your 4th book, could you talk a little about what your 4th book is about?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can, what would you say in 1 sentence to your 25-year-old self?
Wow. The new book is called Brooklyn Antediluvian, and it's about me living in Brooklyn for the last 7 or 8 years, and then finally moving to Philadelphia just this past summer. But really, it's about the notion of floods. I was in the Philippines when Typhoon Ondoy hit. I was in New York when Sandy hit. It's about the flood of memory, because it's about me also sort of getting my way through a breakup. I was engaged, and I was living in Brooklyn trying to heal my own heart. So it's about the flood of memory, and it's also the flood of gentrification. So there's all these images of water and fields and flooding happening in the book. I'm pretty excited about it. In terms of speaking to my 25-year-old self, laugh as much as you can with people, and take care of your body, and take care of the bodies of the people that you love.
As a Filipino, you know that a lot of times people don't understand things like poetry or the arts. So what would you say to either family, or what did you have to say to your family about the fact that you were becoming, or you are a poet? And any advice for any young folks who might go through that struggle?
I should have been an accountant.
What? Poetry doesn't pay?
I think that there's something really noble about getting a good job and then having a family and being able to take care of kids and being able to take care of people beyond yourself. I was just here looking at the records of my grandfather working the sugar canes in Puna district over on Big Island. I calculated how much he made in 1932, equivalent to $766 in 2014 dollars. He made $48 that year. I think that I think it's worth considering actually having a job that can provide for yourself, provide for somebody you love, have enough money to be able to send back to the Philippines, to be able to literally buy space. We live in a time where land is being scooped up, and what is being done with that land is being decided by people who don't give a damn about the land. The only way to have that land now is to have a little bit of money. So I think that maybe the expected thing that you expect a poet to say, oh, follow your dreams, follow your passion. You can't become a poet unless you live deeply in the world. And you can live deeply in the world by being a marketing person. You can do that. And you can think, and you can love, and you can make love, and you can cry, and you can weep by doing all those things. If you want to be a poet, be a poet. If your family's giving you shit about that, have them call me up.
We'll flash the number on the bottom.
It's hard, and you're gonna have to fight for it. But there are ways to find community. For now, do it in your solitude. That's actually, maybe that's even part of the gift of not being able to share it or have it be accepted right away. Is that some ways, in addition to crafting your poems, you're crafting a space of solitude. Everybody can learn. Everybody can learn from that. When it's time for you to find people, there'll be work involved. There's the internet, there are conferences, and there are programs to do that. But I don't want to say one way or another for people to do. It's just worth it to maybe listen to those voices. I just want to say in this little pause right here, Craig is calling on people, and this looks like some kind of poetic tribunal.
So I read your last book, and what were you thinking?
About the order.
Now I'll ask another question then. Thinking about, the rhythm in your work, if you could give folks some advice on how to capture some of that rhythm, some of that movement, some of that dance on the page.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing that I would tell them to do is to dance themselves. If what you want to do is make poems that actually people move, learn how you move. Like walk in different ways, and try to walk the way that your father walked, the way that your mother walked, and write about trying to walk like your mother or father. Try to dance like them, and then write about what it's like to try to dance with them. There's something about being, I was a b-boy, and I think that was also an excellent education in terms of being a writer, because I had to learn things about my body. I had to learn to make my body do things that might not be actually expected or easy for my body to do. So if one of the things that you want is rhythm, it's like rhythm isn't up here and it's not here. It's in your body and it's in your hips. Learn to dance, and better than learning to dance, learn to dance with somebody. Be close to somebody. Touch when you dance. Be in a room of 100 people dancing, and surrender yourself to music. Not only is it good for your poems, that's just how to live. That's just how to live.
Well, on that inspiring note, we're going to take Patrick to the beach, and we're going to dance with him a little bit before he has to go back to New Jersey. Thank you so much for visiting our campus today. Thank you for your amazing performance and for all your insights here in this interview. Safe travels back home.
Thanks so much.
And mahalo.
Wait, where's the dollar bill? Okay.